Hey everybody, I thought I would make a quick video explaining, I don't know, just a pretty simple concept about overbetting the turn. So I had a student send me a hand where they had pocket eights in the big blind. They decided not to 3-bet. They saw a flop versus the button. They said the button was an aggressive reg. Turns out that's definitely the case when the hand showed down. But on the flop, they checked pocket eights. They had 8 of hearts, 8 of diamonds. And then the button checked back. And the turn was the 8 of clubs. So button just binks, a very, very good hand. And as you can see here, really any size you want it to go is, in theory, like according to GTO, fine. But the student decided to overbet like 125% pot. And I had another student say, I don't like the overbet here because I think it's going to be really difficult to balance. I thought if that's something that a lot of people are dealing with, it's a little bit like something that you should get used to understanding and comfortable with doing. Just the specific words that an overbet would be tough to balance here strikes me as a different way of phrasing the fact that the student is maybe uncomfortable with overbetting here or doesn't really understand what the ranges look like and like why we would be overbetting here. We are betting a small size because we want to maybe eke out a little bit of thin value with a hand like, Queen 5 or like maybe 5-4, that type of hand, right? Like 5-4, one of the hands that wants to bet small the most. And just deny a little bit of equity versus like a very large number of overcards that check back the flop. However, we should be able to understand why certain hands want to overbet here. And, for example, how much equity a hand like King 10 has here. So take a second to pause the video and think about like why the solver is using all of these different sizes. So we're not overbetting here specifically because we turned pocket eights. We're not overbetting here specifically because we have, 2 combos of 5 deuce suited and some combos of 10-8 offsuit. We're overbetting here because pretty much any good 10 is strong enough to overbet. We see here Queen 10 off is still strong enough to overbet, but it's a little like it doesn't mind going a bit smaller and kind of disguise its hand strength a little bit because the equity when called is a little bit lower, so the disguising properties are a little bit better. The most important part is just that a strong 10 is way, way, way ahead of your opponent's check back range. If you're playing against a reg, and that reg is trapping pocket jacks here, or, trapping pocket 10s here, or trapping pocket 5s here, like whatever it is you want to say that they're trapping, that's not a good reg. So if we accept as fact that this is a good reg, and admittedly this hand was played at 25 NL, so sometimes people do weird stuff, you never know. But if we just accept that this player is value betting their really nutted hands on the flop, because if they don't, then they basically are drawing dead to get stacks in, then the check back range, when we have King 10, the very top of their check back range is basically chopping the pot. Like, look at it here. Okay, so aces and a little bit of kings are the one exception, right? But this is 6 combos, divided by like 40% of 6 combos here and like 25% of 6 combos here. So you have like 4.2 combos of overpairs. And like if we look at the overall range, button has 512 combos. Okay, so like less than 1% of the time. So if you're afraid to overbet here, you need to get unafraid. Because if you have King 10 or Ace 10 here, it's not that you have to overbet. Like you could bet smaller versus a player that you think might raise. You could bet smaller, but basically that's why you would bet smaller, is to protect hands like 5-4 suited that decide that they want to bet thin for value and want other hands to disguise their strength in order to protect and babysit hands like 5-4. There's reasons to bet smaller with a strong hand. But if you just think that like, oh, how can I balance an overbet here? Well, just think about the amount of strong 10x you have. Like you don't have a million combos of strong 10x, but like obviously you've got some, right? You've got like 13% of your range is top pair. Some of that is strong enough to overbet. And then obviously you have like 6 combos of sets on the flop, and then 3 combos of sets on the turn. And like pocket eights here, I think that the student size on overbet here makes a ton of sense, because I don't think like the EV of betting smaller here, it accounts for the fact that your opponent is going to have some traps that decide to raise the turn, and they're going to have some bluffs to go along with that. That's just not really happening at 25 NL in practice. So if you have a good hand, this is not rocket science, it's your responsibility to get the money in. And then, it's not as if you can't have a hand that's strong enough to overbet here very often. It's not as if pocket eights is like the weakest hand that gets to overbet, or pocket twos is the weakest hand that gets to overbet. So basically what I'm saying is just like learn what the equity of a hand like top pair is after the flop goes check, check. It's 85%. That's like strong enough to overbet for sure. And get comfortable with basically overbetting thinner for value if it's something you find hard to do. You may be wondering where your bluffs come from here, but you're probably not, right? I mean, like, once you've established that you've got hands that are strong enough to overbet for value, you just have infinite bluffs to choose from. You've got Jack-9, you've got a whole bunch of different hearts, you probably have 3-4 suited, you've got, you've got combo draws, like King-Deuce of Hearts, you've got a whole bunch of trash you can choose from, like Ace-4 offsuit. Like, there's just a million combos you can choose from to overbet as a bluff. And when you're constructing that range, you want to have a mix of strong draws and weak draws so that your opponent doesn't have an easy fold, knowing that their bluff catches have very little equity against like super draws and the mega nuts, so that they know that there's some trash in there that incentivizes them to call. So yeah, like hopefully that all makes sense. Just when you have a strong hand and your opponent has capped themselves, you're supposed to bet big. If you bet smaller, there are sometimes reasons to do that, but you should really understand that like the natural size for a hand like Ace-10 here, the size it genuinely wants to bet, like if you node locked the solver and said you can only bet a 10 or better here, or a bluff, then this would absolutely be the size the solver would choose. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If you have any questions, let me know. Run good at the tables, and have a good rest of your week.